Excuse sir.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to delete it there, but
Mm-hmm.
it is working. And I don't know what doing
What
now.
are you want to share your screen?
Uh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. You sharing it? Yeah? No? Okay. Yes. Could you zoom in a little bit? Screen.
okay.
Uh, yeah. Click on the screen, and if you have a mouse scroll, hold on control and scroll up and it should zoom in. Click on the where the text is. Right? You have
It now.
you miss you misspell the include to the top. INCLUD this on line 2.
So say that over.
Include on line 2. You're missing the C. On line 2,
Okay.
yeah, you misspelled the word include. Um, hold on, right? Check the chat, and also you have to declare the str by doing char str 100 after me. Check the chat, Alicia.
Okay, yes, sir. But it glitching now. Okay.
Did it work? All right. Okay, let me know if those two suggestions work, right? Um, right. So we are continuing, and we want to do a first file read. So we have our file inside of our values_C folder, and we want to do a file read on that file. So we want to now create a new file, save this as first_file_read.c, and we're going to try a file read. So in the previous example, we opened the file for writing, okay? Now we want to open the file to print out information from the file. It's just to read one line of text from the file. But and then we will move forward in terms of reading more and more text from the file. So for us to open this file to read, right? Again, I'm going to do char str 100, right? This is where we will read the line of text from the file into. So that's what we will store that's where we will store the information that's inside of the text. We want to open the file for reading, right? But so we say fp is equal to fopen, And we want to open the file, of course, in the same location, right? C:\\\, Valdez underscore C \\, file.txt. And we want to open the file for reading. Now, here is something that is very important for us to do as programmers. You'll notice that on my computer, I have my file represented with its extension name, the .txt here, right? Some of you all might only see the name file. That is because you don't, inside of View, you don't have file name extension checked. It's important that you have your file name extensions selected so that you'll see the whole name of the file, right? As in the name of the file, dot, and the type of file that it is. Because sometimes what I notice students do is that they'll have file name extensions off, but then want to name this file file.txt. But as this file is named here, this is actually file.txt.txt because name extensions are hidden. So make sure you don't fall into that trap. Okay? The name of this file should be file.txt with extensions turned on. Once you have your file name extensions turned on, this is the complete name of the file. And that is what is going to match up with this here. Everybody's fine with that? Yes, this explanation is here in this video being recorded so that if ever you run into this issue, you could always go back to that little example there and be clear on how to name your file properly. Because of the fact that if the file doesn't exist, let's say for instance, if the file did not exist, and I'm going to delete this file here. If this file didn't exist and I try to open this file, I am going to get an error trying to read information from this file, right? Because I cannot read information from a file that does not exist. So what I'm saying is that we open the file here, but after we open the file with a file read operation, we have to check to see if the file really existed for us to open. So we have to say if fp is equal to null, right? If fp is equal to null, which means if the file read operation was unsuccessful, what do we want to do? We will say printf, right? And I love to put this, right? System panic, file read error. That sounds serious. I'll put a getcha here, pause output, and say exit, right? System panic file read error. So we show an error message. Pause screen output, and then we exit the program. Because if our file can't read properly, then our program might be able to go forward and do what it needs to do. And this is what we telling the system, the program to do here. Now you could always, when you get good enough, write code to decide, okay, if the file doesn't exist, create the file, right? If the file doesn't exist, create the file. You could do that too. But for now, right, let's just quit the program if the file doesn't exist. So I could run this as it is here. And I will get, because the file does not exist in the Valdez_C folder, I get system panic file read error. And that is absolutely correct because the file does not exist. Everybody understand me? My program exists. But what if I create the file? So I know that the file exists, right? My file has data in it and it exists. I just created the file. I know that the file is there. I see the file. If I open the file has data in it and it exists. If I run it at this point, my program should just exit without the error message. Because the file exists. But we don't just want to know that the file exists. We want to read the data from the file. Right? We want to read the data. So how do we read this line of text from the file? We can use a function called fget. And this is one of two ways that I will show you how to read data from the file. Fget reads data a line at a time from the file, a line of text at a time from the file. So if I have more than one line in the file, I could read data from a file line by line, okay? And it's actually my preferred method, but I will show you the other method because the other method is good for examination purposes. But fgets is good for your SPA purposes. Okay, so if I want to read a line of text from the file and I want to read a line of text into the str string, to read a line of text from the str string into not from the str string, from the file into the str string. What do? I use fget. This kind of looks like something we know, but is not quite right. So what do I want to read this in? I want to read it into str. I have to put the maximum size of my string inside of fgets. So 100 is the size of str, so that's the amount of strings, the most amount of characters that I could read into the string. And I have to put the source of my data. And the source of my data comes from fp. So I use the fget function to read a line of text from the string into str. So that data that is inside of str is now inside of the file is now inside of str. And then I could print out the contents of str, which hold the line of text from the file. Okay, so it prints out the contents of str, which holds the line of text from the file. This is just a simple printf statement. And I could put %s, str, and I should get the information that's inside of the file. So if I compile and run, printf, not print. Printf, my file has data and it exists. That is the data that is inside of this file here. So I read the data from my file. I loaded the data up from the file which is stored on the computer using fopen with the reading mode R. And I checked to make sure that my file does indeed exist. We see if the file doesn't exist. Let's say, for instance, if the file name was off. Okay, so if the file name was off, if I said, instead of file.txt, I said files.txt, it tells me that I had a file read error. And that is because there is no file pointer that's pointing to a successful read from files.txt. But if I have it as file.txt, which is the file that exists in this specific folder of my computer system, then I don't get a null pointer for FP, and I can successfully read data from the file. But I know the next question that comes after this is, but sir, what if there is more than one line of text in the file? Who was going to ask that question?
So probably Joshua.
I was thinking it, but I didn't want to say it. Joshua, Joshua, were you thinking of that question?
But sir, what if there's more than one?
Thank you. Somebody had to ask it, right? We want our files don't just have one line of text in them. So what if let's say for instance, this file, and I'm going to just put more text in it, right? But so, what if there is more than one line of text in my file? What do I do? So let's see how our first file read, right? Which I realize I have first file read. But what does our first file read do about this particular situation? Well, I only have enough code to write one line of text, to read one line of text. So it only reads one line of text. I could take this code and I could create a new file. And I'll save this name multi_file_reader multi_file line_read.c. And I'll paste this code because this code is very similar to what we'll need to do, right? This code is very similar to what we need to do, but we have to now make some adjustments here that would allow us to read and print out each multiple lines of text. So it's a very simple adjustment. And all we do is that the way that files are, let me explain it in terms of with the illustration first. All right. If I have a file, and a file can have information on line 1 of the file, line 1 of file, line 2 of file, and then line 3. How does my computer system know that my file is finished? There's an invisible character that is called an end of file character. End of file. Wow, what's going on with my stuff? End of file character, right? End of file character. And hold on there. Right, so we have this end of file character here, and this is an invisible character that we could look for to say, okay, keep reading until we hit the end of file character, right? So we could say read and print here, read and print, and then do the same here, read and print, and then do the same here, read and print, but then we hit the end of file character and there's no more data to be found. So we can say while we are unequal to file end of file, right, for FP, once we have not seen that end of file character inside, I see a hand hazard, right? This says while we are not at the end of the file, while we are not at the end of the file, I want to read a line and print out. And then I check to see if that line that we just read had the end of file character in it. Yes, Hazard?
So it's basically like an array, a string array.
It's kind of like the \0, yes, except for a file. So you could think about it the same way. It's a marker that says this is the end of that stream of data.
Okay.
Okay, so now when we run this, look at what happens. It continues reading the data from the file until we hit the line with the end of file character in it, at which point it knows to stop. Now look at my format here. It says while not file end of file FP. So this means while we have not met the end of the file. Okay? So this function here looks for the end of file character on a line, on the last line read, essentially. If the end of file character doesn't exist, it returns false. So that's why we put the not here, because the while loop has to go as long as that is true. So we say while we have not found the end of file character, because when file end of file finds FP, it will return true, essentially. And this will flip it to false, which would mean to stop. You all understand the logic behind this? Yes or no? Yes, no, yes, no. I ain't hear nobody. Anybody? No? Okay, I see a yes in the chat. Thank you, Eden. All right, and Joshua says yes too. Okay, and I'm worried about the whole rest of the class. All right. Yeah, it is a.
Yes, sir, we understand.
All right. Okay. Okay. So Ali had to make me admit it on video. Sometimes I just like to hear your voices. So I ask a question, right? But now you have evidence of me saying that. Okay. So yeah, Joshua, I get what you're saying with the arrays and the having the end character. And it's you could think about it like this in this instance, right? But you know, it's not that the end of line character is on its own line, eh? It's at the end of a line. So you know you have to be careful with that. I will let's do a little exercise with this and see if we can get it. Right? So let us write a right, so file underscore IO underscore example.c. Right, so we want to write a C program that allows a user to enter a name into a write a C program that allows a user to enter a name into a list, sorry, enter names, just names, sorry, names, and those names will be stored in a file. The program has two options. Enter a name, which is the first option, and two is to view all names, right? So we have two options here. Enter name or view all names, right? Well, and of course, three. So three options actually, because you want to be able to exit the program. I want to also use a couple functions to do this. I think we could do this in the little 25 minutes that we have, right? The user does not put the end of file character. The end of file character is put actually when that F close, which I did not have here, right? All right, F close FP, right? Close the file read. Okay, yeah. The end of file character is put by this F close or F open statement. So when you create a file and you press save on the computer, once the computer system sees, well, there is no more data to write for this file, it puts that F close character at the end of the file, end of file character at the end of the file. So yes, yes, Eli Josiah, sorry.
So, didn't you run the program without the F close just now? Didn't you still like have to put the F close?
That is for the read. You'll get away with it for the read without putting the F close, because the read doesn't really push information to the and this is F close. Yeah, the read doesn't really push information to the file in terms of it doesn't change the file as it exists. But it's still wise to close your file pointer, especially if you have a separate file operation coming up in the future in your program. Right? The file write, let's take out the F close here and see what will happen now. It might or it might not write to the file properly. Sometimes the last thing written to the file doesn't get properly written to the file. So as it is right now, our file has this information in it. But if I took out the F close from the file write, and I say test information, right? And let's see if it successfully wrote it to the file or not. It wrote it in this instance, but sometimes when you have like a stream of information right into the file and you forget the F close, especially with file writes, it doesn't write the last thing to the file. Yes, Hazard. Hello, Hazard.
So why coming out in bold? You could like change the text.
Why?
So why coming in bold? You could change the text.
Oh, my. That's just how I have the. I just have that my font set for Notepad as this font. So I don't know what font is the typical font. So it might be something like this. So that might be how you see in your information. There's no formatting on this. This is just pure text. Right? It's just pure text. So I think for me it was, I can't even remember why I changed it. It probably just easier, or maybe I was working with my children and they find it was pretty or something. So all right. So the C program has three options, right? We enter in a name, we view in all the names, and we exiting the program. So we want to, of course, we have I'm just gonna go the lazy route and copy and paste it because it's all the same. All right. If this, return 0 here, and we know that we're ready to start. All right, so what could we do here? Okay, we can call we could use a function to call the menu. We know that a menu program typically doesn't have any function call or anything, so and we want this menu to loop until we hit 0. So we can say while 1 and we call the menu. Okay, so we have our menu being called. So we're going to do our menu. So we say void menu. And what does our menu have in it? Our menu will just simply have these 3 options. It's already laid out for us here. So maybe we could do something like just put print statements around it or something. So all right. So you could say printf please make a selection. Forget my quotes up here too. All right. So we have our menu here. So if we're making a selection from this, we could name this int choice. And of course, we will scanf a value into choice. So you see scanf, and we put our %sign D there, ampersand choice. Everybody's with me so far? We know that we could get chars after this to just clean up input. We could use a switch statement, switch choice, and we will have cases. Case 1, and case 2, case 3, break, and default. So what do we do in case 1? In case 1, we want to ask the user to enter a name. In case 2, we want to view all the names. And in case 3, we can exit the program. So for us to be able to enter a name, we have to do what? We have to write to that particular file. Okay, because so the first case would allow us to printf. What do we want to write to the file? Well, to print to the user, we want to say, please enter a name to add to our list. Okay, we have to have somewhere to store this name. We have to have somewhere to store this name. Where do we want to store this name? We can have a name. How long is this name? Put 100, all right, or maybe even 50. So we want to store this name, so we get name, right? And what do we want to do after we get the name from the user? We want to write the name to this file, to the file. Okay, so we want to write the name to the file. Now, in this instance, which file mode would be most appropriate? In this instance, which file mode would be most appropriate based upon what we read? Because if you want to add a name to the file, If you want to add a name to the file, then what do we need to do? And this will bring up a interesting little challenge, right? Can we use write to add the name to the file? Hello, are you guys there?
So yes.
Yeah. Why would you use write? Remember, what's the property of write in terms of our file modes? When we took a look at the file modes, right? What did I say about opening it as W though? W will override the information that was in the file. But what about appending? You want to put a new name to the end of the file, not so? So in this instance,
Yes, sir.
append will make more sense than write. Because append will make more sense than write. Because we don't want that every new name will remove the last name and put a new name. We want to keep a list of all these names coming down. So please enter a name to add to our list. All right, we get the name, but we want to open our file in such a way that when we have a new name to add to the list, it will be added to the end of the file. So I'm going to do it very basic, and then we will see about we see what issues coming up as we add names to the file, right? So what do we have to do? We have to say fp is equal to fopen. We could store the file name in C:\\\, files underscore C / names.txt. And we want to open the file mode as append. So we add names in append mode. We add names in append mode.
So, nothing was coming up on my screen. Like, here you're typing, but nothing coming up. I was seeing Siva on I can now show up. All right.
Yeah, I know. On Tuesdays, my internet is a little stressed because I have class the same time. Both my daughters have class. So my internet is, it'll be a little behind on Tuesdays especially.
I think that was just you, Joshua, because I saw him typing everything.
Oh, well, then in that case, it's just Joshua. But either way, it should be fine when we have the recording to review. So we have add names in append mode. So we open the file. Actually, let me put that more. Open the file in append mode, which would add names to the end of the file. Which means that if I go printf, not just printf, but fprintf, and I say fp, right? And I want to add a new name, $s, which is the name that I just got, and that was str, right? I say add the name to the end of the file. Add the name to the end of the file. And then I want to fclose fp. Right? Close the file after the write. Right? Or after the append operation. Let's check this out. Let's check this out and just see if this first case is working here and how it works. Okay, so we can run this. str is name. Sorry, name and not str. Okay, right. So we want to, we get our options and we say enter a name. And we want to add a name to our list. We say Joshua, Joshua. Now, Joshua does not exist inside of here, but when we press enter, names.txt got created. And let's see if Joshua was successfully written to here. Yes, it was. And now let's see if we choose to enter another name, right? And we enter an Shaynelle, Chanel. And I press enter. Chanel is added onto Joshua. Is this useful for us? Should we have some sort of spacing or something for the names? Maybe each name should go on a new line, right? Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we see a problem that we could create for ourselves. Eh? So let's delete names.txt, but I want us to create this problem for ourselves because it might be interesting to see how we deal with it. And let's say that we should put this with a \n here. So now when I create my names, right, enter name 1, Jude, right, enter name 2, Rune, enter name 3, Chelsea, all right, and I exit the program. Oh, I don't even have code to exit the program yet. Okay, I'm programming like a bad programmer. But I'm going to my thing here and I'm seeing, okay, now everybody is on a new line. But look at this little hanging edge I have here. See this little hanging edge here? That could cause problems in the future. But let's move forward. We solved the problem of having data on multiple lines, right? We solved the problem of having data on multiple lines. So let's move forward. Let's put in our case tree break printf. And we put a get char there to pause screen output, and then I exit 0 to exit the system. So we know that the goodbye working, and let's put in our printf invalid selection made. Try again. 1, 2, 3. /n. So we put in some code there. So in the event that we have wrong input, like a 7, it should say try again. All right. If we exit, it should tell us goodbye and the program should stop. So now we want to get into the read. So we could just start off by saying in a printf statement, name list. And we want to list all of these names now. All right, \n here. So name list, and we want to list all of the names. So in this instance, we need to open the file fp is equal to fopen, and we fopen the same file from up here, because that's the file that we're reading, but we fopen it with a read operation going on. Right? With a read operation going on. So what do we want to do? We want to read from this file until we reach the end of file character. But how do we, what do we get from here? We will get, we have to make sure that the file exists. So we say if fp is unequal to null, or let's just say if fp is equal to null, right? We have to show an appropriate error message. We could show printf file not read or missing. Okay. Program will quit. And put a get char there. Pause the screen output, and then you put a exit 0. So in the event that we don't have a file that exists, so something is wrong with our file and it can't read, we don't try to read from something that is not there. But once we get past this piece of code, we could go into our while in equal to file and the file for FP, which is our file pointer, while our file pointer has data to read. While we're not at the end of the file, what do we want to do? We want to read in some data from the line, and we could use the same name. So we could say fgets name, what was the size of name? 50, comma, and then we reading that from FP. So we storing the name that was in the file into the name variable. And what you want to do is that you want to print f value from name. So we want to print f the value from name. Okay. That's not correct. This is %s. And we want to print name, sorry. Right? So we want to print f the value from name. And of course, when we're done, we want to do the same fclose for fp. Make sure that you don't put your fclose inside of the while loop, or else you'll read one line and then fclose, and then you'll get a null pointer here and it'll stop. All right? So this is what we do in the second case, where we want to see the name list. So we already have some names in the file. We have some names in the file, Jude, Varun, Chelsea. Let's see if we can get them to print out properly. So if we say view all names, right, we get Jude, Varun, Chelsea. But you see Chelsea is printing out twice. You all notice that? Well, I mean, it's right in front of your face, right? Chelsea is printing out twice. So what can we do about that? What is causing that? That is actually caused by this extra line coming at the bottom here. So look, I just removed that line there. Now let's see. Let's see what happens when we run it. All right, view all names. Jude, Varun, Chelsea only print once, but we now have that. We don't have that \n there. So it's something that we have to consider, right? And I'm going to show you what actually is being read into the name array each time. What is being read when I read the name Jude is Jude, and \n is being read here, right? Varun is being read here, Varun with a \n. Chelsea is being read, but Chelsea does not have a \n read next to her name, right? Because the cursor ends right here. When it was down here, it had a Chelsea with a \n. It had a Chelsea with a \n, but Chelsea was printing out twice. So that's an issue that we need to try and fix. And I have 3 minutes. I know exactly how to fix it, but I don't know if I could do the fix in 3 minutes. What we'll have to do is that we'll have to basically, right? Because look again now, when I have that space underneath there, and I run and I say read all names, 2, Chelsea comes out twice. How can I fix that? I can fix that by essentially modifying how I put the data into here, right? In terms of fprintf. If say like I can modify my code to check and see if this is the first person that I'm putting into my file, then I don't put a \n. All subsequent people get put with a \n and the name in front of it, right? So I mean, we could do something like this, but this would just create a new kind of error, right? This will create a new kind of error. I could put the \n in front here when I'm writing to the file, and I could put a \n here when I'm printing out, and it will give me, right? Oh no, sorry, actually. Let me modify the file to remove this space from the bottom here. And when I run the file and view all names, I get a less of an error here, right? But you notice that I kind of now have 2 spaces between the names. It's making it print out funny. So maybe if I maybe even if I save this without or print out, don't print out any values with the \n. So one last thing, I'm going to start with some new names and let's see how that printing out. That's not the fix yet. The fix is a little more technical and I'll go into the fix next class. But let's enter a couple names. All right. Josih, Josiah. Let's enter another name. Sachin, Sachin. And one more name. Natalya. Right? So let's view the names. And you notice now that the names come out. We still don't have the \n to the end. So it starts the menu later on. And we end up with a space at the front. Because when we wrote to the file, the first person had that \n before the name now, instead of after, right? This is something you could think about, just think about before next class in terms of what can we possibly do to prevent this, okay? And I will show you next class. Just remind me at the beginning of next class, I'll show you what I like to do. It's actually that we have to read the file, figure out if there are any names in the file, and then decide whether or not to print a \n or not. Okay, and in all cases, printing out the file, we will if it's the last name, then we will use a \n. Sorry, if it's the last name, then we won't use a \n. All other names we will use a \n inside of here. So we have to put an additional amount of logic into making this format properly, but the functionality of file input and file output is there. Okay, so we have any questions before we close off? What we did today was that we kind of did a recap of functions, and then we went into file input output. We looked at how to write to a file, how to read from a file, and this example here showed us how to append to a file and also to read from that appending to the file. Do we have any questions?
I don't think so.
No? Right?
So,
This is, yeah.
I was kind of lost from, I guess, when you start, but because this whole recording and everything was pretty much sticking, but hopefully, if I don't do it, it'll work. So, yeah.
Yeah, and give me like a hour or two, and it will be added to the YouTube playlist that I shared at the beginning of the class. Okay, so you could just look over. Anybody else? All right, David has many questions, but he doesn't know them yet. Okay, I'll sit and think about it. ponder upon it. And when next we meet on Thursday, I will be here to answer any questions that you have. Okay, guys, technically, we only have one more topic that we need to look at, and that topic is structs. And then after we do that structs topic, I will go through some, IA development classes with you guys, and we would start to focus on our IA, okay, on our SBA. And after that, we will get into the theory aspects of computer science for the course. Any issues, any questions, complaints, grievances? Anybody? All right. Well, then that's it for us for today. I'm going to stop the recording now.